All right, so just to give you an understanding of the foundation of what we're doing, we're, just celebrated February 1st, our 20th anniversary of our company. We couldn't think of anyone else to think about the future. Not not only for us, but in general, it's the future of entertainment.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So to me, I want to have this parallel conversation about future. It's our future with you, but it's also the future of
The industry.
where is the industry going.
Awesome. Well, I'm
So
honored.
to me,
Thank
this
you.
is perfect.
Yeah.
So
Good
so
for
to
you
me,
guys.
I'm excited because there's more meaning to why you are representing future for
Oh my God,
us.
thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, good.
Cool. All right, so let's get started.
So yeah, the way that we normally get started, just so that we have clean audio take of it, is if we could get you to just introduce yourself by name, full name, into the mic.
Great. Kermit Weeks, Fantasy of Flight.
Fantastic. We wanted to start our conversation by asking, how did you and Cecil cross paths?
Oh, wow. Well, I've been on my journey for quite some time, and of course, started Act 1, Act 2, and basically closed the doors to Act 2 of Fantasy of Flight in 2014. And I had bumped into Bob Ward, who was like kind of the original, one of the lead design guys at the original Universal Studios parks.
Yeah.
And we had bumped into each other at a themed entertainment SATE conference. And it was just kind of synchronistic destiny. And eventually, as we kind of got working together a little bit, Bob recommended Falcons, and Falcons was a match made in heaven. There's no question that we were not supposed to get together to move forward with what we're doing, and it's been, there was a couple little bumps there, I think, early on that, we were trying to figure out how we were working with each other, because I don't think I'm your normal client. And,
That's an understatement.
and but things are going pretty good now, and the coolest thing for me is everybody's really excited about where we're headed, because I'm fascinated by the industry as it is, but in and of itself, as it stands now, has no purpose for me. It's a fun business to be in, but I see if it's tweaked slightly with what I hope to deliver, I think it has just tons of potential, because it has meaning and purpose, and I think that's potentially where we're going to take this.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Cecil.
So I just kind of remember that SATE conference. I think it was Carnegie Mellon.
No, the one I met Bob at was
it
Scam.
Savannah? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was a guest speaker at both Carnegie and Savannah, and so I was actually prior to you guys meeting. I think I had spoke about architecture, storytelling with architecture, and I just kind of remember sitting back down in the audience and actually seeing this kind of a eye contact scenario that happened when Bob Ward stood up and Kermit stood up in the audience, and kind of looked at each other across the room. It was like this romantic scene where you guys kind of navigated towards each other.
Yeah,
but
everything went in slow motion. The seas parted, the lights came down from the heavens.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was the first. It was the first break actually after, because they that particular SATE conference, they broke it up into half days, and it was story, architecture, and it was on the first break, and I had it was only the second SATE conference I'd ever been to, and it was interesting. Adam Bezak was looking for people, storytellers, and literally the night before I left the drive up there, I said, hey, I've written a couple children's books. The next morning I wake up right before I'm ready to drive, and he says, you're on the panel. And literally, before the first break, I got introduced. I only spoke for a couple of minutes, basically, on a 30-minute panel with about 8 or 10 people. And the next person up after me, he got up, and the first thing words out of his mouth after he got introduced, he says, oh my God, Kermit's my hero. Yeah, because he was an airplane guy.
I ran into a hero of mine, Kermit Weeks.
sinking in my seat. And at that point, everybody, you know, I stuck out like a sore thumb. And it was literally after his deal,
Celebrity on stage.
Yeah.
you know, at the break, you know, that Bob and I bumped into each other. It was great.
But it was like that. I know Bob describes it like that there was just kind of a pulling energy between you guys in the audience.
And it was interesting too because we started to connect later, and I remember having lunch with him. And, you know, Fantasy of Flight had opened on 11/11/1995, and I'm sitting there talking to him, and this, of course, this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and so a lot of time had passed since we'd been open, you know, 20 years, I guess. And I kept getting this message in my head, ask him if he was at the grand opening, my grand opening party. And
Which was off the charts.
Yeah, I said, you weren't there, were you?
No, but I've heard of
oh
so
my God,
many stories about
so I said,
it's legendary
Bob,
party.
by any chance were you at my grand opening party? He said yes, and he was a friend of Pat McBride who had done my, you know, design things for the original deal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh.
Yeah, he described how epic that party was, that event was.
It was
You had speakers
1,000
out.
of my closest friends.
Well, I'd love to chat a little bit more about how our journeys have intersected at various points. You were talking about what that process was like, especially when you were first looking for design firms and working with Bob. I feel like any project, any collaboration is kind of like trying to find a new language together, but that is especially the case with a vision as unique and ambitious as Fantasy of Flight Act 3, where it's not just like trying to invent a language together, you're almost trying to invent an entire new universe, a new way of thinking, and so I'd be very curious to know what that process was like, especially early on.
Well, it was interesting because I think very early on it became apparent I wasn't your normal client. And I remember coming in and I basically just laid out everything I'd done, and I probably had a big thick report, and you know, this was going to be Act 3, and here's all my ideas, and here's going to be, you know, what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it, or whatever. And it was interesting because I think you all got a little bit blindsided, but at the same time, you know, I was trying to figure out the way you guys worked, and I think you guys had pretty much, there was kind of a standard way of doing things in the business, you know, so I was trying to understand that, and Bob was giving me the themed entertainment, you know, book as to, you know, what the chronological order of how you do things, you know, and I think early on, you know, we started to work together, and I think the basic way I can describe how I approach anything is really just to follow the energies, and it's like when you want to create something, you start throwing spaghetti on the wall, and I've used this metaphor before, where if you're going to write a book, you throw all the spaghetti on the wall and you look at it and you go, well, this obviously needs to begin in the beginning, this needs to be at the end, and eventually the chapters form and stuff. And
it's an artistic process.
Yeah, and I think you have to do the kind of the masculine left brain side of it, that's the physical reality aspect, but you also have to go with the feminine feel, allow this thing to, you know, because they got to balance them and make it work. So
I would describe the delta in process from my point of view a little different than we're getting to know each other thing. For us, we were always in tune with you creating a vision in your head of what you wanted, and there's a difference between promotion and producing. And so in my mind, you could talk about your vision, but our role for you is to build it, to ground it and mature the design. So it may sound like there was a bump, but to me it wasn't. It was intentionally us absorbing information and knowing our role is to get it to mature into a physical building kind of scenario. So yes, there's a process of methodology that's predefined in the themed entertainment book that Bob talked about. We were never trying to force that process yet. It was more about maturing the conversation to take it from here's what I'm thinking to us understanding, well, how does that translate into, you know, physically putting it into paper, right? Because that we felt obligated that we needed to mature it from not just, you know, dialogue, or it's really now literally saying, how big is that? You know, how much does it weigh? You know,
Yeah.
how expensive is it? You know, and so, and also from a creative standpoint, how do you interpret what you're doing? What medium should we use? Should it be content media? Should it be only oral? You know, or do we want to make it more immersive? So I think a lot of it for us was trying to bump you off center as
Yeah.
much as you were bumping off
Well,
center
you
to mature it.
guys obviously understand the industry and the technical delivery of things and blah 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 blah. And so yeah, so my vision was kind of maybe out in the clouds, and definitely, you know, we need to come together where you guys can bring it into reality, and that's where I think the great marriage came.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to for me, is that you respected where we added value.
Oh, for sure, because you know, I mean, you guys, there's no question about that.
And for us, you bumped us off center. I mean, again, we've never had someone that knew. I mean, you know what you want to build. Oftentimes, we're brought to the table with very haiku of a storyline, more maybe driven from business than it is about a vision.
Right.
Right? It's more monetary. Here, you know, you experts help us mature a vision that would financially be a
Yeah.
viable thing. Yours is so defined in your head. It's been built in your head. And so for us, this is unique because we're not in that role of actually coming up with a vision. It's
Right.
actually being a catalyst for it to be realized. And
Yeah.
so that was bumping up off center, you know, so which is refreshing.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And so
I
to
can
be able to see it through your eyes, it's been exciting for us. I mean,
Well, it has been a very long road for me. It wasn't something I sat down and wrote. And you know, people that know me, there's kind of a woo-woo side to me that basically this thing has unfolded. I can't take full credit for it because it's been given to me over literally like a 20-year period. And there were times when, you know, I would come up with something and I would see it at one level, or I'd trademark something, and then come to find out 5-8 years down the road, I'd go, oh my God, there's a much higher meaning to what's happening here. So, you know, so I think as this moves forward, you know, I love having all the talents around me of the people that know what it takes to bring in this reality, but at some level, you know, it's just kind of like, I kind of feel like a filter from the, you know, and if somebody has a great idea, I'm like, man, I'm right there.
Yeah.
I jump on board.
Right.
But if something doesn't feel right to me, you know, even my ideas, you know, I go, okay, well then that gets shelved, or
Yeah.
it needs to be modified.
yeah, talk a little bit more about what is Fantasy of Flight. I think that's an important thing because it's so unique
To understand.
To understand
Yeah.
the difference. What I just described, typically, you know, developers have a vision more about the business model aspect
There's
of
a
it.
commercial
There's a
challenge
commercial.
that we are tasked to solve.
Right.
Yeah.
And we oftentimes superimpose storytelling and other assets that
Yeah.
help that for a consumer. But talk from your heart and talk a little bit more about why this is different and what you're creating.
Well, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the existing industry is great. It's fun. I've always been very fascinated with Walt Disney. Read a lot of books about him. You know, the whole thing. There was an energy draw there. But the existing industry, in and of itself, has no purpose for me, and that's really kind of what you guys are in now. So. The existing industry, as Walt created it, and Universal Studios jumped on the bandwagon, and you know, and other organizations, they basically it's designed more for the masses, the families, and blah blah blah. You know, and basically what I want to do is I want to create something that's more for the individual. Okay, and where this becomes important is the existing industry, from my perspective. Walt's segue was we had just come out of World War II in Korea, okay? We didn't have to deal with the aftermath cleanup of Asia and Europe, okay? We came back home with our troops. We were looking for, you know, to escape from that, okay? Yeah. And so, to me, you know, we had 2.3 kids and a great new interstate system to drive across this country, and we didn't have to deal with the cleanup. And it was Leave It to Beaver time. We were looking to escape from reality. So to me, that was Walt's segue. And it was amazing what he created, and it was so new and refreshing from the previous industry, which I've talked about before. He basically stood on the shoulders of the amusement park industry, which I believe, became a fixed base operation of the traveling circus. And, they kind of, we've talked about, what's next in the industry, but my question is, what's the next industry? Yeah. And so I think if you want to stand out, and I believe pendulums swing, okay? So if you want to stand out, be the opposite of the existing industry, which is not my purpose, but it falls into that category because the existing industry is more for the masses, and it's about escaping from reality. What I want to create is something that's for the individual, and it's more about engaging reality. So we still want to use the great theming, the great ride technology, the great story,
the tools of the current industry.
Immersive environments. You still use that, but you deliver it in a slightly different way. And so the way that we hope to deliver the way we're going to deliver our entertainment, because I've already done some beta testing of products that I've already created, people, while they're immersed in an environment and they're emotionally engaged in the story, which is not an intellectual property. So each attraction element is not an intellectual property. It's based on a theme common to the human experience. But everybody, we all see reality from our own different perspective. So we're not here to tell anybody anything. What we do is we take these common elements of the human experience and allow people, while they're emotionally engaged in the experience with all this great theming and immersive environments and ride technology and bumps and noises and sounds and everything, while they're emotionally engaged in the experience, they cannot not help but reflect on where they've come from, where they currently are, and where they are going to go, or where they dream to go, or where they wish to go or feel drawn to go. And so we don't tell anybody anything, and it's just during the deal. I think the existing industry, basically, when you get off of a ride, basically, I have no intention of delivering rides. I have every intention of delivering experiences. Instead of getting off and going, oh my God, that's really cool, let's get back in line, or where's the next one, like eating popcorn, I would rather have my future client say, I want to go sit on a bench somewhere and think about this, and reflect on what they just experienced and how it applies to their own life. And so instead of using entertainment as an end to make change, and I'm rubbing my fingers together for the audio listeners, what I want to do is I want to create a product where we use entertainment not as an end product, but as a means to an end to your own self-discovery and self-transformation. So we don't want to tell anybody anything, and basically the simple scenario, everything for some reason in my reality comes in threes. But what we do, the basic thing is we start with a theme common to the human experience. We deliver it through the most profound way to plant seeds of change I think that's ever been created. That's entertainment, because we're open and receptive. But then you deliver it in the most profound way to learn and grow that's ever been created. It's not through teaching, it's not through preaching, it's not through clubbing your neighbor over the head saying this is the way it's going to be. It's through your own self-discovery. Because when you self-discover something for yourself, you own that experience. It's yours. It's got sticky value, and it's memorable. And I think that's those situations. And not everything is comfortable in life. Some of the greatest experiences that we have, and the most memorable and the most powerful learning opportunities, are ones that come from what are perceived of hardship and situations. So uncomfortable and uncomfortable. So I think what's kind of been shown to me is basically you can define this reality as one wavelength of a sine wave. Okay, and if you look at that defines duality. Okay, you've got ups, you've got downs, you've got white, you've got black. What shade of gray am I currently experiencing? And so, based on that, I've come to discover that it's not all about just, sitting on a cloud at some point, strumming my harp in infinite bliss. It's about these realities that we find ourselves in. There are worlds of experience, okay? And you can't know one without the other. If you want to do the middle Buddhist path, you can do that, but to me, what we truly are, what's really been shown to me in spades, is that what everything truly is infinite potential. And within these worlds of duality, infinite potential is going to see it from itself from every point on that sine wave. And fantasy flight has nothing to do with being metaphysical or whatever. That's just my take on it. People are going to see it from their own different perspectives. And like I said, it's key to understand that we're not here to tell anybody anything. We're only
From
here
a preaching standpoint.
we're only here to lay out an hors d'oeuvre platter, and people can pick and choose and apply what applies to them, and everyone's going to pick something different. And however they personally internalize it becomes their own self-discovery process, and everybody's going to be different. And just imagine going into a theme park of the future where nobody tells you anything. You literally change yourself inside. You leave a different person and nobody knows what went on. And if we can deliver that, I think we're onto something.
No doubt.
I think that's
David, go ahead.
just awesome to kind of hear that, because I think you can draw so many analogies to kind of our celebration of our 20th anniversary here at Falcons is we throughout these conversations in this podcast, I think we've tried to communicate and explain what is the secret sauce, what makes Falcon so special, why we've been successful, we all love working here and all those things, but I think Kermit said it so well, is it's a journey of self-discovery, and so for those of us that have been here so many years, it's like, it's everything combined. It's the highs and the lows, and that's what makes it as amazing as it has been, so I think, man, what a perfect kind of client and project to talk about for the future, because it just kind of reinforces
It parallels
of Falcon's journey.
journey
Yeah, I
as
mean,
well.
it's just perfect.
And I have to interject here. Everyone here that I've worked for has been very excited about the project. Everyone's just like, there's just such an energy and an excitement, and everybody, they get it, and
It resonates.
Yeah, they do. And I've explained to people, our job here as artistic creators of whatever we're going to do to create this thing, is to try and get people to, our mission statement at Fantasy Flight is to light that spark within. It's nothing more than a metaphor. This reality that we experience in my world is created with light, okay? So what light that spark within is, if what we truly are is infinite potential, it's basically infinite potential coming into this, you expressing what you truly are, infinite potential, into this world of light in your own unique way. And I want people to discover that from themselves. We all have so much potential within us, but the only way we can experience ourselves as infinite potential is through limitation. And we always have this ability to go beyond what we perceive ourselves to be, and that in essence is what the Fantasy of Flight concept is. It's got nothing to do with airplanes. It's all about flight of the human spirit.
I would love to hear your thoughts on the who of it all, the audience, because you're talking about, you asked that question, what is the next industry? What is the future industry? And I think it's pretty safe to say that if we do our jobs correctly, this will be an experience that is relevant and meaningful to everyone who attends.
It was interesting because I never took any business classes, but all of a sudden I found myself in a failing business when Act 2 opened, and I'm like, why did I spend all this money? And so I realized a long time ago, if you follow really big dreams, you have to pick up tools along the way you might not normally have an interest in. And I remember in the learning in business, I always heard this saying that, you have to focus down on your niche market. You can never try to appeal to everybody. Yeah. I'm sorry to say, but I believe this product is going to potentially appeal to everybody, and it's I think initially it's going to be kind of interesting what our clientele is going to be, because we're going to be so different. People are going to go not know what to do with this. Yeah. And, you might have I was a seminar junkie, and I've done, I'm a facilitator in all the Franklin Covey, 7 Habits and Leadership and blah, blah, blah. I did all the Disney Institute stuff, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra, and people might go, because those people go to those types of seminars because they're looking to go beyond themselves. And so that might be, certainly, I think all of those guys, that clientele. you know, you kind of look at some of the local theme park people around and you go, are they going to buy into this? Because initially,
that was my question.
I don't think so, but the reality is, here's the good part. The good part is we're only looking to do 250,000 to 300,000 people a year. There's 65 to 70 million people a year coming to Central Florida wanting to look for something new to do.
Statistics are on your side.
And you know, if we can do that, yeah, I mean, all we want's a little piece, you know, and I think once the seed gets planted and begins to grow, people are going to go, this is different. This is something, and potentially, I don't know what the park prices are these days, but I'm just going to say $100 to get in. You know, do I want to go to a place?
More like $200.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So, but basically, you know, do I want to spend my money at a place where I can go do this and blah, 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 and have fun and leave with a smile on my face and some cool pictures and some memories? Or do I want to go to a place where I personally can change my destiny, myself?
Yeah.
And empower myself. And I, you know, another thing that I see, it was at the Carnegie Mellon deal where you spoke, Cecil, and there was the first day, some of the big boys got up and they were talking how basically they knew you wanted to come to their park and be a hero in their intellectual property. Okay, well at Fantasy of Flight, a long time ago, I always insisted that my welcome mats face out the door. And they've always been that way for a long time. And it took me a while to kind of get my people, not trained, but basically, you know, they'd clean up and then they'd turn it around the other way. And so it's interesting. Imagine that, you know, the existing industry wants you to come and be a hero in their intellectual property. I get that. And they're escaping from reality and it's cool and I want to be this kind of a superhero person. But a Fantasy of Flight, it's the complete opposite. I would rather have you come to Fantasy of Flight and use it as a wellspring source of your own self-inspiration. And I'm going to have a sign when you walk out the door, and it's going to say, and you're going to be walking over the welcome mat, which is facing out the door, and it's basically going to say, welcoming you to becoming the greatest superhero you can be and the greatest story you can ever participate in. Very different approach. We'll see how it gets accepted.
One of the things that I find personally so compelling and fascinating and exciting about this process, as we are in the thick of it and designing the experiences and looking at how guests will interact from touch point to touch point and actually experience this, is how some of the most established things begin to change, like the terminology. You know, queue now means something different. You know, pre-show now means something different. The duration of an experience, especially, you know, given the number of people that you're hoping to to get here, the capacity and all of those things, the duration of an experience can now be much longer. You can go through different rooms and seeing how the same skill set and the same tool set that we've had in this industry can now be applied to a completely different mechanism. I find that's one of the most exciting things that we've been seeing throughout the studio.
Yeah, that's one of the things personally I'm most looking forward to.
Absolutely, yeah. I just think that in and of itself is indicative, right, even on the surface level, of how different and unique it is. And then once you actually dive into the story and the message and the experience, then you really start to, you know, it's layers upon layers of change.
Well,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, David.
Go ahead, David.
Well, as Kermit was mentioning, you know, I think our team just truly loves working on this project, and I think it's for all of those reasons, because it is refreshing. It is refreshing. It is something a little bit different, and it's deeper and it's layered. So it's rewarding on that level too.
It's
participate in it.
authentic and
Yeah.
meaningful.
Absolutely.
Well, I think where the industry is right now, and if you look at like I said, to me, the traveling circus stood on the shoulders of the traveling gypsy bands. The amusement park industry said, you know, hey, the circus only comes to town every once in a while. Let's create something that we can be fixed base, and then all of a sudden they could do Ferris wheels and wooden roller coasters, you know. So you had the Palisades Park and Coney Island. Period. And then Walt comes along, you know, and basically takes the amusement park thing, but instead of having it open for advertising and, you know, then it was maybe not as quality as it could have been, he basically immersed you in an environment instead of leaving it open for
Yeah.
advertising. But my point here is basically all the tools and the elements are in the previous industry. They just get repurposed and used in a different way.
Yeah.
And eventually there are cycles in every industry, So, my burning question when I stood up at the end of the SATE conference in SCAD was, literally the theme of the conference was what's next.
Yeah.
I stood up and I said, all you're talking about what's next in the industry. My question is what's the next industry, okay? Because that's my interest. I think to stand on Walt Disney's shoulders for anybody to do and take it to the next level can be very, very, very powerful if it's done properly.
We've gone through the majority of the questions that I had. Is there anything else that we wanted to touch upon?
Well, thinking, kind of channeling what listeners are, absorbing here, they're going to be intrigued on your dialogue. And there's how do you envision what this is? It's a challenge without saying, hey, come to it. It's profound. But I think for me to try to be an interpreter of what you just described and kind of talk to it as someone who's just getting introduced to it.
Yeah.
I think of some of the experiences that are out there. One that I think isn't 100% there, but is in the same vein where storytelling is powerful, right? And you could talk
All
about
comes down to storytelling.
the storytelling is
Yeah.
the key.
Yeah, totally.
And you could watch a film, and let's say it's Star Wars, it's Joseph Campbell, it's the emotional arc,
Hero's Journey,
Hero's
yeah.
Journey, and I sit in the theater and I look at Luke Skywalker and I project myself, right? So I am now
Yeah.
projecting myself to be Luke, right? So I'm emotionally connected. And so if there's any kind of messaging for the listeners is think about all the tools that we have, matured in the themed entertainment industry. Rise of the Resistance, Spider-Man, Dark Castle. These technologies, these ride systems are so successful in putting you for escapism into using these tools to now role play what you would typically see and project yourself in feature films or television, which was a different medium for storytelling. But that's how powerful our mind is, right?
The suspension
entertained.
of disbelief.
The suspension of
is
disbelief. It's instant, right? I choose to be Luke Skywalker when I'm immersed in the film. Even though I could see the corners and the edges,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting here and there's people around me, I choose to
You're
do
so
it.
willing to be there.
Yeah. People want that, right?
Yeah.
And so think about how you don't, it's even easier now because I'm literally in a vehicle riding through an experience and I feel the wind.
Yeah.
I don't have to pretend like there's wind, right? So think about all that amazing technology that is, consumers don't even think about it, they just feel it, right? It's like creating real life, right?
Yeah.
The best way to simulate is not to simulate, right? Make it actually move and
Make it
fly
move.
through. So I think about that and how it can literally get you to be exposed to receiving emotion, right? And Heroes and Legends is a good example where we went human-centric when we did the Heroes and Legends. It was about emotionally connecting and inspiring the future astronauts, right? A 12-year-old girl could be our future astronaut to Mars, right? So we chose to put emotional storytelling instead of about hardware.
Yeah.
Like it's not about the airplanes. It wasn't about the rockets. It's about the human
behind the hero.
driving to be a frontiersman, a pioneer, an adventurer, right? So that is starting to, as far as current experiences, for those who are listening, that's kind of the inception of where this is leading, is to be emotionally connected, to be open to receive what the potential of who you are could be,
Yeah.
using these amazing immersive tools that the theme park industry and the themed entertainment world has created. We're going to use those same high-end, high-quality, high-resolution, high-visceral experiences in Fantasy of Flight as the connective kind of brick and mortar, but it's the storytelling, emotional connection that will allow you to see your own potential. That, to me, if I were an interpreter, of those who understand the power of theme park storytelling as it relates to intellectual property that are more spectacle
Yeah.
to something that's more
And it's-
inspirational, I think is
That's
the
what
beauty.
that's the
The
community.
personal.
That's the takeaway I'm hoping the listeners can
And it's
understand.
using something, I mean, when you mention the space thing and the little girl looking there, she can be an astronaut.
Right.
She can be something in this real world. But you look at some of the superhero things and it's like, one day am I going to be a princess, really? One day am I going to be
Batman.
something to where I can
Batman.
crawl up the side of a building or something, you know? It's just, so anyway, and I still think that, because we, like I said, we live in worlds of duality, okay? So you can have one side of the coin as escapism, and the other side of it is engaging,
Yeah.
okay? So, and I think the intent with some of the existing stuff is to show the power that we have in the things and use emotional human things to where they make decisions in a way that is, but you're never going to be that person in this deal. So I think what we're trying to bring it down a little more to this reality to where it has a direct, not an indirect application to my life.
And you've already created experiences that answer this. Your audio experiences is a perfect example where you literally put on headphones, sit in a real authentic plane, hear your stories that you've basically produced and created, the emotional connection, the escapism, you're literally in the moment. And so
And-
that's a good example of where I was able to understand the power
And
of what your vision was.
And the plane becomes this immersive environment that puts you in the experiences of an individual that you're hearing about who went through that. But
You basically become, and you're in a situation where instead of your seat with a whole bunch of other people, you're in something yourself, and
Yes.
you're going, wow.
in an authentic plane with the real textures
Because
and the real handle.
We've taken you out of an environment we've put you in an environment that is very unusual. We've taken you out of your element and put you in something that's very real. And it's interesting too, because one of the things that I realized as I moved along on this, I think the existing industry is more driven towards external spectacularism. And what I think we're working towards is moving towards internal spectacularism. And so we've talked about this before, if you've read a book and you go watch the movie, you go, oh, that's not what I saw, okay? Because the director saw something else. Every person in that audience saw something different when they read that book.
It's very rare that it's executed as good as your own interpretation of
unless you're the director.
Exactly. Right.
But so what happens is by taking advantage of that with these audio experiences that are going to be throughout the park, we're going to use them as one of our experience deliveries. What happens is what I discovered was the greatest theater you can ever create is your mind, your own mind, okay? Because you're going to see it in your own way, and everybody's going to see it somewhat differently, and you're going to take away. Basically what you're going to take away because your experience and your life story
It's
and
so
your journey is
individual.
going to be
It's back
different
to
than
your
everybody
comment
else.
about it being an individual.
It is. It
Right.
is.
And just to hit that point home, I think it's so interesting that you're in that plane, you're hearing that story, but the story is not about the plane,
No.
and the story is not about what it was like to fly that plane.
No.
The story is about something much more universal and timeless that individual went through that you can certainly relate to in some way of your life, and the experience invites you to make that connection, to find those shared connections between what that journey must have been like in that alien environment for you and what you are going through, in your own life and what that journey can be to you.
It's going to be very, very interesting when we're going to do a little bit of beta testing, ahead of time because the one thing it's going to be finish my point that it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of comments we get when we really start to open. I've done some beta testing where I pipe and drape some of my real airplanes. You know, we're going to build cockpits and things like that, you know, to deliver on the grand scale. But basically, you know, I pipe and draped them and put some fans in there, and I came up with my own little customer survey. And I'd sit out there on weekends by myself, you know, and have people fill out the surveys, and every day the survey would change. I would have to go back and modify it based on what I learned. It was something fascinating I learned because, you know, it's kind of in a limited lighting deal where you're sitting in these cockpits listening audibly to
It's a very
stories.
theatrical environment to evoke that theater of the
To
mind.
go within, okay,
Yeah.
to go within, and we might use maybe some vibrations or some wind or something, and
Scent.
one percent,
Scent,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. You know, whatever 5 senses we can use to deliver, we will. But it's not to get you to go externally out; it's to get you to go internally
It's
within.
only to supplement
If it takes you
what
out,
allows you
it's
to.
off the board.
Right.
So
Have you been struck by any of those initial comments from your
Well,
early beta testing?
Yeah,
You shared a
back,
lot of those
yeah,
with
back
us,
to
yeah.
the deal. It was fascinating. One thing that I learned, which surprised me, like I said, we had limited lighting, you know, kind of orange lighting, because I want people to go within. There was one particular situation where you're taxiing in an airplane, and I knew exactly on the time code because I'd set my watch and I'd turn the fans on low and they'd go to half speed, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're going to take off, and then I'd turn the fans on high speed, you know, and I'm out there I'm being my own, you know, like, you know, controller, yeah, basically. But something that absolutely fascinated me, which, you know, we could learn to potentially take advantage of, is half the people surveyed would do the experience with their eyes open, and half of them would do it with their eyes closed. I
Without any prompting.
With-
Yeah,
without any
that's a
no,
surprise. You know,
so-
you would just assume that, you know, it would be eyes closed.
Well, no,
but,
not necessarily,
or eyes
because
open.
you're
Really? I
holding
assume
things or
the
what.
opposite.
Yeah,
It depends on who. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Cecily, you did a couple of them, you
Yeah.
know, and I can't, and you would have filled out the survey, I
Yeah.
think. And so one of the things that all of a sudden came to me in that particular situation, where if you had somebody that would have their eyes closed and somebody had their eyes open, excuse me, the potential could be there to where at the end of the deal, all of a sudden potentially a screen opened up in front of you, and obviously the person that had their eyes closed and the lights came on, they would open their eyes to see what was going on, so you could, like, you know,
Yeah.
Provoke
you
another
know,
layer
something
of immersion, yeah.
depending on what you delivered. So this is going to be really, really fun. But I had one girl there. I was saying, you know, what would you pay for this? And this one girl said, oh my God, I would have paid $100 for that, you know, and it was like a little 10-minute experience or something. And I think,
But it just shows you how effective it was for that person.
yeah,
And
You
how
know?
much novelty there is
Yeah.
to it
Yeah, yeah.
for people. People are recognizing that it's
I
something
remember
different.
the takeaway. It was almost 99% of the people appreciated that experience. It was so consistently
And-
embraced.
and I think
As
what's
simple as it was, if you think about
I
it.
think what's going to be very interesting too here is when we first open these things and people get exposed to it, they're going to be going, what? Because they're not going to know what it is when they come, and they're not going to know what to do with it. But once they understand what we're trying to do and they get touched by it, then they're going to come back and they're going to be coming into Fantasy of Flight knowing that they're looking for their own self-discovery and change. That's when it's going to get really powerful. So.
Thank you, Kermit, so much. This has been an amazing
Thank you.
conversation.
We really
You know,
appreciate it.
We're really excited about our 20 year, and we're excited about our future, and so I'm excited about helping you.
Oh my God.
Creating the next industry.
And
Yeah.
you're a big part of our future, so.
Oh, well, good. Well, I'm looking forward to the next 20 years, and I hope you guys are all going to be with me. So cool.
Awesome.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. And
All
we're
right.
good.